Monday morning, when I checked my emails, I got a bit of a scare when I saw I'd received something from HR. Without going into much detail, I work at a big organization and we've got multiple buildings, so it's not like everyone knows everyone. If you get an email from HR, it's usually one of two things. You're getting canned, or someone filed a complaint against you. I nervously opened the email to see which it was. From Human Resources to Jonathan Taylor. Important meeting. Hello, Mr. Taylor. We would like to meet with you today, April 24th, 2017, at 9:30 a.m. Please confirm you've received this message. Regards, Jeff Williams, Human Resources. The email didn't give me much to go on, except that I wasn't going to have to wait very long to know what was going on. And also didn't give me much hope. We're in the middle of a reorganization here at work, so any news is bad news. There was no running from fate, so I emailed back and accepted the meeting, and spent what was left of my morning pacing back and forth, worrying about my job. Jeff from HR welcomed me into a suspiciously dimly lit room and sat me down on a long boardroom table. He stood across from me, looking through a small stack of papers. My throat tightened. Were all those reports against me? Were they my dismissal papers? Jeff started. Before we begin, Mr. Taylor, I'd like to assure you that this process is 100% confidential. Okay, I replied hesitantly. I knew there was trouble. I could just feel it. I was getting canned for sure. Jeff didn't look at me, instead keeping his focus on the papers in front of him. I'd like to ask you a few questions, and I want you to answer as honestly as possible. Can you do that? Yes. He nodded. Excellent. Let's start with something easy. How long have you been working for this organization, Mr. Taylor? I swallowed hard. It hadn't been long enough to be sent into early retirement, that was for sure. Maybe it wasn't, but it felt like a loaded question. About 12 years, I said. And your office was recently moved into a new location, is that right? He asked. They'd started the reorganization process a few years prior, and my whole team and I had been shifted off to another floor about a year ago. That's right, I answered. He continued asking me to elaborate. And since the move, has anything unusual occurred? I let out a nervous laugh. Coffee machine only works half the time. Jeff looked at me for the first time since I walked in. Have you been feeling stressed lately? What a weird question to ask. Of course I was feeling stressed. Everyone's been feeling stressed since all our jobs are on the line. Well, yeah, I answered. Do you think that stress is contributing to the problem, Mr. Taylor? He asked. Now, I was a little confused. I guess. He scribbled something down on his paper. I felt like I was at a cross between a police interrogation and a psychologist appointment. Jeff set his pen down and once again looked me in the eyes. Have you been hearing unusual noises in your office, Mr. Taylor? Honest to goodness, I had no idea what he was trying to get at. Was this about Jamie? I mean, yeah, she chewed with her mouth open and put the radio on a bit too loud, annoying everyone in the office, but that didn't warrant an HR investigation, did it? Then again, if they were looking to cut someone from my team, they'd be looking for any little excuse to do so. I figured by going along with it, I could safeguard my job. Sorry, Jamie. Yeah, all the time. It's driving me nuts, I answered. He narrowed his eyes and nodded to himself as he began taking notes again. He continued this for at least a minute before addressing me again. What about the walls? He asked. I don't really see them from my cubicle. What about them? I replied. When you hear the humming, do they still change? I looked at him, perplexed. Wait, what? What humming? Jeff turned the page and read what was written on it. I could see his eyes scan over the text multiple times. He contemplated the words for a few moments, and then looked at me sharply and said, You reported that, and I quote, It always starts with humming. It only happens late in the evening, when I'm the only one left in the office. It starts with a low humming, then the walls bleed. Then he shows up. Closer every time, breathing heavily. That's when I run. I stared at Jeff dumbfounded. I never said that. He shuffled in his seat so he could lean over the table, giving off an almost menacing air. He spoke calmly, but with the sternness of a parent scolding their child. Look, Joshua. May I call you Joshua? It's a serious offense to lie on an official report. You can call me that, but that's not my name. As far as a report, I have no idea what you're talking about, to be honest. Now it was Jeff's turn to look confused. He scanned his papers and, in a quizzical tone, asked, Joshua Taylor? No, I answered. I'm Jonathan Taylor. I could see a bead of sweat rolling down the side of his face as he tried to piece together what had happened. He scratched his beard and reread the papers in front of him. You know, funny thing, I get his emails all the time, I explained. It was true. Our email addresses were assigned automatically. They started with the first letter of our first names and then our last names. If someone had the same first initial and last name, then the system added a number to the end. So, for example, my name is jtaylor5 at myorganization.com. If you sent an email without paying attention to the full name in the preview screen, it was surprisingly easy to send an email to the wrong person. I have no doubt that Joshua Taylor received more than a few emails intended for me, and vice versa. Jeff sat up straight and regained his stoic composure. It would appear my assistant may have accidentally sent you this invitation instead of its intended recipient. You're good to go, he said as he waved to the door. There was a brief pause before he added, Let me remind you that this is a confidential process, and anything that was discussed in this meeting cannot be shared with your colleagues. He quickly stacked his papers, got up, and left in a hurry. I was escorted out of the HR offices by one of his assistants and walked across the street to my building. Back to business as usual. It nagged at me. All day, it nagged at me. I couldn't help it. Joshua Taylor had submitted such a weird report. I knew I had to keep the meeting with HR confidential, but I just had to ask anyways. In the late afternoon, I broke and sent Joshua an email. From Jonathan Taylor to Joshua Taylor. Meeting mishap with HR. Hey Joshua, funny story. So I got an email from HR intended for you. Looks like they got our names mixed up. Anyways, I hear something's up in your office, and I'm kind of dying of curiosity. Want to chat? It's cool if you don't want to. Cheers. Jonathan. I got an undeliverable almost as soon as I sent my message. Yeah, at that point, I should have let it go. Hell, I should have let it go before I sent the email, but come on, wouldn't you have done the same in my shoes? I looked Joshua up on our employee directory and found his phone number. I called once. No answer. Waited about half an hour and called again. No answer. Work started piling up, so I got distracted and pushed the issue aside. It was about 6:30 p.m. when I got everything done, and I remember Joshua sometimes worked late. I picked up the phone just to see and gave him a third and final call. Someone picked up the receiver. Hey, this is Jonathan Taylor. Funny story. I began, but shut up when I heard something on the other end. It was a strange, low hum, followed by heavy breathing. I hung up the phone.